Let's see. Well, hello, friends. Let's see if that works. Everything's a little bit different again today. Thanks, YouTube. All right. Okay, yeah, people can see me, I think. I'm going to take that literal definition of bruh saying WHF as a signal. Sweet. Thank you, Firefox. Okay, let's see who's already here. Taro Boba with the bacon bubble tea emojis. DJ Wisdom, Adler, and Jillian. Surreal Egg. Hello, everybody. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS office hours. It is Friday once again, and we're going to do what we always do and just talk about SerenityOS and related projects, programming, stuff like that. If you're not familiar with the stream, what we do here is 4 p.m. every Friday, we just talk about anything that you want to talk about relating to the SerenityOS project or the adjacent projects like the Yakt programming language and recently the Ladybird browser. And you ask anything and we'll try to look into it. So more people dripping in, very nice. Sup, Thomas. Ooh, German WTB joining the Golden Yak herd. Thank you very much for that. Enjoy the Golden Yak emote and also the other emotes. I added a bunch of additional emotes to the YouTube member thing a while ago. So there, I think you saw some people using the Yak Speed one up here. Very, very nice emote. Let's see. Arnab says, I love these sessions. Thank you for doing this. Sure. I love these as well. I think it is a fantastic way to just engage with as many people as possible live at once. And I have to say, like, it's really helped me develop quicker thinking, because in the past I was always afraid of sort of being put on the spot or speaking in front of a crowd where there might be questions. But now that I do this every week, that stuff does not seem scary at all anymore. So I've been getting a lot of value out of just daring to do these. But I'm super glad to hear, of course, that you find them valuable as well. Donata says, hi, Andreas. What do you think of milk and black tea? Well, I think you can definitely put milk in there. I don't generally do it myself because I just enjoy pure black tea, like pure Earl Grey tea. My mom puts cheese in her tea sometimes so that it melts, and then she sits there and looks at it melting and she says, I haven't quite adopted that habit, but I don't know, maybe it comes with age, I think. But milk and tea is all right. It's just not my preference. Although with one exception, of course, chai latte is amazing. I can drink chai latte all day and all night. So let's make an exception for that. But other tea, just plain. Hello, ASDF. Hello, Milan. Hello, Mati, saying, do you think that porting Docker to SerenityOS is possible? You mean Docker, the container technology thing? I don't know how Docker works internally. So it might be that it depends on a lot of sort of Linux specific mechanisms. I've never looked into the internals of it, so I couldn't tell you if it's, something that is portable with like a certain amount of infrastructure work on our side, or if it's something that would require like too many architectural compromises. But I think ultimately, if somebody wanted to investigate something like that, they're free to do that. I'm not personally super interested myself, but I'm not going to stop anybody from investigating. And now would be a good time to insert ads, YouTube says. So I'm not going to do that. Let's see. So Taraboba says, what is your one must-have emoji that we currently don't support in Serenity? Mine was the bubble tea, but we now support it. That is, oh, that's a, it's a funny question. Like, what's the must-have emoji? I don't know. I think I tend to use a lot of emojis on Twitter. I can't help myself. So maybe there's some way to like aggregate which ones I normally use. Apparently I have to be logged in. So let me grab a different browser window here. So I guess like the nerd face emoji one. I don't know if we already have that one. I'm also recently a big fan of the sweating, laughing one. But I don't know. I feel like the way that we've set up emojis in Serenity is, it's a little bit unfortunate, the fact that we're constrained to these really tiny bitmaps. And I feel like while they look very quaint, I just can't help but wonder if it's going to bite us in the butt. And also, I feel like you used to be able to cat this file. Maybe catting these never worked. But you can see these, yeah. So I don't know. Like, it would be kind of cool if they would work at least a little bit higher resolution. Somehow. I don't know what would be the appropriate technical solution, if we should have some kind of vector graphics, or if we should just have like multiple bitmaps at different sizes or something. But lately I do feel like these are a little bit constrained. Let's see. Tommaso says, hi, hope you're doing well. I recently watched your video about losing touch with your audience. Do you have some new opinions on this topic? So that video, I remember making that. So I made that before I started streaming, and I was sort of responding to a question. I mean, I don't remember exactly what the question was or how it was phrased, but it was about, somebody was asking me if I worry about losing touch with my YouTube audience. And that's what led to office hours becoming a thing. And I guess I'm happy to report that I feel like I'm in touch with the audience, because I speak to you almost every week on here. And that has been absolutely fantastic. And I don't know. I used to do these car videos where I would just sit and talk for a longer time, and those were nice, but they did not have that kind of interactivity that we get here, where you know, you can ask questions live and then I can just react and respond. And I think, at least from my perspective, like I'm way better in tune with you guys now than I was before I started these. And I feel like it's a very meaningful thing in my life to be able to talk to all of you like this. So I guess that's my opinion. I feel really good about it. And people keep showing up for office hours every week. You know, a lot of new people show up, some old people drift off, but there seems to be something about it that sort of resonates, or something about it that works, where we're able to have a recurring weekly thing where we just chat about what's going on. So as long as that is interesting to people, I will continue doing it. Let's see. Adler says, what is the latest on Ladybird? I saw your tweet with the benchmark. Nice. So the latest is, let me go ahead. So the latest is that we can now run the SunSpider JavaScript benchmark. And this is a benchmark from the Safari team. I think it came out in like 2008 or something like that. So it's really old. It's one of the earlier browser benchmarks on the web. And it's basically a stress test for various parts of a JavaScript engine. And until now, it was not possible to run it, because it was doing a bunch of goofy things like creating iframes and then scripting into them, And we were lacking pieces of web platform infrastructure that made that possible. So I landed like 30 patches this morning that added all of the necessary infrastructure bits so that you can now, you can now instantiate an iframe and then start running scripts inside of it, which makes it possible to run SunSpider. And as you can see, it's not running very fast. If we grab this thing here and we can try it out in Firefox instead, you'll see that it'll run quite a bit faster. You'll see the countdown here as it goes through each iteration of the test. So my measurement says that we are roughly, I'm just going to stop this because it's going to hog the CPU, which we need for streaming. Yeah, so we're roughly like 125x slower than Chrome and about the same as Firefox. About equally slow compared to Firefox. And there's a huge number of things that we need to improve, but a lot of it is low-hanging fruit. So that is very exciting. And I guess, that was just the latest on Ladybird with respect to that benchmark. The browser itself has not changed that much, but a lot keeps improving in the browser engine. And from my perspective, Ladybird at the moment is primarily a debugging and development tool for the libweb, LibJS on other platforms. So all the exciting stuff happens elsewhere, but that's something that is pretty sweet. Jeje says, installable toolbars for browsers in Ladybird when? I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm not sure about that. Let's see. So Ben and Nuga saying Docker relies on Linux very heavily, but there is Yacker. Yes, I remember somebody posting Yacker. Was that you? Some kind of a container solution for Serenity, which looked disturbingly real. I'm not sure if it was fake, probably was, but it looked elaborate. Network exception says containers on Linux require the kernel to be able to isolate processes and other resources into namespaces. Right. So we don't have any of the architectural support for that today. Like we have a flat namespace in our kernel, like one global process table where everything is visible to everybody else. There's the file system is not namespaced either. So perhaps that's something that we would like to expand into, supporting like namespaced process tables and namespaced file system and things like that. But I don't think anybody has been doing any work on it. But I find it interesting as a security mechanism. So it's something that tickles me a little bit. So maybe something to investigate one day. Vitz Lab says, can you see yourself ever going back to work at some big tech? Well, sometimes I have these dreams where I wake up in the middle of the night and I think I'm working at Apple, or I think I'm working at Google or something like that. And I feel kind of bad. Like I feel like I gave up on myself. I gave up on trying to live outside of that ecosystem. Like the professional ecosystem. And I'm really quite happy on the outside. And initially when I left, I was really worried about the financial aspect of it, because it seemed kind of scary to take such a big step down in compensation, but over time I've seen again and again evidence that I'm just much happier out here, not feeling like I'm part of that machine, even if that means having less money. It just feels better to me. So at the moment it seems very unlikely. It's something that I have nightmares about. but I'm always so happy when it's not true or not real. Linus says, well, hello, friends. Well, hello, Linus. Linus is asking, what's your opinion about, will car talks ever be back? I miss car talks. All right. Well, since you ask about it, I guess I have to make one. I need to go outside more, to be honest. I have not been going outside much lately. So getting in the car would be a good development for me anyway. And since I'm going to bring my phone, I might as well record something. Okay, fine. I will make some kind of a car talk. Let's see. Arnab says, hi, Andreas. I know you have answered this question before, but I wanted to know how I can start contributing, or is Serenity too big to start contributing right now? Well, Serenity is absolutely not too big to start contributing. And I'm not sure there is such a project in existence that is too big that you can't contribute to it. Don't be scared just because something looks big. Everything big is just a fractal of smaller things inside of it. And those things are fractals of even smaller things. And it's true that when something is large, you have to, sort of get closer to it and look inside of the fractal to find the things that are bite-sized appropriately for you to pick up and work on. But you can absolutely start working on Serenity today. We have new people joining the project every month, which is amazing, by the way. Super cool to still see new people picking it up. And we had recently with the Yakt programming language, we've had a whole bunch of new people who had no affiliation with Serenity or no experience with it. They've joined because they were interested in helping out on the programming language stuff. And now they're sort of poking around in Serenity a little bit as well, which is really cool. But what I usually say to people is, if you want to work on Serenity, the best thing to do is just to build it and run it on your machine and then mess around with it for a bit until you run into something that bothers you, something that doesn't seem right, something that doesn't work, or something where you feel, well, this would be better if, right? I guarantee you'll find something pretty quickly. And then once you have something that bothers you that you want to improve, try to figure out how to improve it and then take it from there. Like, that's a very organic approach, but it typically works for everyone. Just let your own itch drive you into it. Let's see. German DubTB says, Serenity is, in my opinion, in need of some custom vector and bitmap file formats with color palette support. It's on the to-do for me, but I fear I won't have time for that. Maybe just chip away at it. Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing would be to support something like SVG, because we have to build SVG support anyway for our web engine. So writing or modularizing SVG in such a way that it can be used outside of the web browser, and you can sort of use it as an image decoder on the fly, I think that could be really cool. It's hard to like yoink it out of the web engine because there are all these like intricate connections between the DOM, the HTML DOM, and SVG behavior and CSS and all that stuff. But I think it would be perfectly fine to have some sort of libweb-based SVG renderer, and that could be a really cool thing. Although, yeah, maybe there are other approaches to that would be good as well. It just seems like SVG is kind of a, universal vector format, so it seems like a good place to start. Anyway, let's see. Graham says, hey, only just got the notification. Okay, so these are not time stamped, are they? So I don't know when You sent that. That's kind of weird. Yeah, sorry about the YouTube notifications. I can't really do anything about that, but what I do is before going live, I always post in the content announce channel on Discord. So if you are on our Discord server, you will always see in the content announcement channel that like something is some kind of content is coming out, and that's like the most reliable place, I would say, if you are struggling with the YouTube notifications. Let's see, Lucky or Iaki, I don't know which one that is. Let's imagine that it's Lucky. Says, love the work that you do. I was wondering how much time roughly do you spend on SerenityOS development? I'm struggling to keep motivation when working on personal projects. How do you deal with it? So SerenityOS development is my full-time job since May last year. So I am working on it full-time every day of the week. I do try to do other things on the weekend sometimes, but I'm not great at that. I end up working on Serenity a lot, and but it goes in waves, really. There have been periods where I worked 16 hours a day. There have been periods where I worked 4 or 5 hours a day. Right now, I feel like I'm a reasonably healthy 8 to 10 hours a day, but I'm also not tracking it, so I don't know if that's accurate, but it's sort of what I imagine it to be. Maybe I could track that, actually. Would be interesting. But if you're struggling to stay motivated when working on personal projects, I would say take advantage of the fact that you are the boss, and do something that that is more fun. Like if you're not having fun with your personal pet project, then turn it into something that is fun, or find something else that is fun, because you don't have to keep working on something that at the point where it no longer interests you, right? If it's just your personal project that you're just doing for fun, if it's not fun, then it's failing to meet its goal, so you can move on. I think sometimes I've certainly done this where I felt like, oh, I've put so much time into this, I have to see it through. But I think it's okay to step away from things that we started because we wanted to have fun. It's okay to step away at the point where it's no longer fun. But I don't know the specifics of your situation, so I can't really speak in detail about that. Let's see, Subankar says, can we do embedded hacking on SerenityOS? Well, you can certainly try. I'm not sure exactly what embedded hacking is, but perhaps. Let's see. Jeja says, Andreas, could you expand on your thinking about the emojis? I love the style of 7x10 scaling up, but the shrinking of high-res emojis like our Yakts looks good enough, or... Right, so my thinking was just that it would be nice if I switched to a larger font, for example. So I have not tested this recently, but it should work to switch to a larger font, right? So if I switch to 12 here or whatever, and then we need to fix those, by the way. Then these look kind of goofy. Can we get a magnifier up in here? The magnifier is so comfy. So like there's this smearing, because of the imperfect resize, and I feel like it does not look super good. It would be nice if we had something that allowed us to have like nice looking emojis at any font size. Like, this heart here it doesn't look very good with the smearing. So that is what I dislike about the current setup. And I don't know what the perfect solution is. Maybe a hybrid approach is a better solution, where you would have bitmaps for certain sizes and then fall back to vector at larger sizes or something like that. I know that Haiku, they have some kind of format where it's like a hybrid of both bitmap and vector graphics, and it seems interesting. Let's see. Seb says, have you ever been using Vim, etc.? I use VS Code plus NeoVim for most of my work. Sure, yeah, I was using Vim almost exclusively for many years, so I'm very, very comfortable with Vim. But in recent years, I started using IDEs because I guess I was just curious what they can do for you, and I used to sort of shit on IDEs, like many Vim users sometimes do, and I was just ignorant. I didn't know what additional functionality a good IDE could provide, and I'm still not milking the IDEs that I do use for everything they have, and but I've learned enough about them to stop talking shit. And I mean, I try not to talk shit in general, but I find myself a little bit surprised almost how much I'm enjoying using stuff like CLine and VS Code recently. There's a lot of little things that are nice in those environments. Donatas says, now that you've been working from home for a while, how do you keep a healthy routine? How do you keep one? I don't know. I'm fairly like routine oriented person. Like I tend to live my days in kind of a consistent routine way where I do the same thing every day almost. And recently, my wife has been dragging me out to go on these walks at night, which I love. It has, I was resisting it at first, but I kept going along with it. And now I'm so happy that we started doing that, because this nighttime walk feels really good. Like it clears the head and gets some fresh air. But I think in general, I just try to keep a consistent routine, and I try to eat like consistently every day. I have this intermittent fasting schedule since a long time now, where I only eat between noon and 6 p.m. And that also feels very nice because I wake up sharp and have like high energy in the morning, which I didn't have before when I would eat breakfast or eat late at night. But yeah, I just try to find a routine that it has like these simple things in it, and then I just stick to it, and I don't do anything complicated. I don't have it written down, but the basics of it are sleep around 8 hours a day, eat between 12 and 6, and try to get some exercise every day now, and do work in between. Maybe I should write it down. I guess I'm afraid that if I write it down, then I will start to kind of try to tweak it, and the way that it has grown organically has worked out really nicely. Fernanda says, what distro do you use? I use Ubuntu Mate on this here desktop machine. It is not very fancy, but it does all the work I need it to do. Ubuntu Mate for a retrospective future. Yes, this is what I use, and seems to work just fine. I'm not a fancy Linux user. I don't have particular unusual needs for Linux. Hello, Nyako. Geoj858 says, how did you set up your keyboard shortcuts for CLine? So the way I set them up is I just just edit them here in the key map. So I have my own key maps, which are, I think it's not necessarily that anybody would want to use these. I just, I have certain muscle memory things that I've accumulated over the years, like from using Xcode a lot or using QCreator a lot. And there are certain key things that are just, I don't know, they're just embedded in my hand nerves or hand muscles. So I want to have those work. So whatever environment I use, I go and I add those as alternate shortcuts. But I don't think there's anything like objectively good about my keyboard shortcuts. They're just something that I'm used to. So that's why I don't try to tell anybody to use the same things I do, because I don't think that they're better. They're just familiar. Obina says, hello friends, been a minute. Congrats on getting Yakt to self-host. Great work from everyone. Indeed, thank you for saying that. It is very cool that we got Yakt to self-host, and like now we're seeing new features coming into the language in the last week. It's been nice, very nice, and I don't know. I'm just so happy that a small community formed around the Yakt language so quickly, with people who are excited to work on it and improve it. And I'm really excited to see where the language goes and what we can do with it. I don't know. It's just so cool. I don't think I expected that so many people would be interested in working on it. I thought it would be like me and JT, and maybe a handful of people would want to poke around, and then maybe later more people would join. But I don't know. It went really well. So I'm really, really pleased with everyone. Really proud of the work that everybody's doing. Adler says, I am not a professional developer, never wrote one line of C++, and I did not know how programming languages work. And yet I made some small contributions to Yakt. Don't be afraid to try. That is absolutely true. And I think Adler has made great contributions to Yakt. I'm really pleased with some of his feature work recently. I've been using Adler's features a ton and just feeling really happy about it. So definitely don't feel held back by your current experience level or inexperience level, or like lack of familiarity. You can become familiar with anything. You just have to put some time into it. Fikisar says, if I want to contribute to Serenity or Yakt, do I have to start using this smile instead of this smile? That is optional, but encouraged. Let's see. Firefox says, currently in Yakt, when an error bubbles up, you only see the error itself, not where it came from. Would you personally like to see an error return trace in Yakt? I think that would be very helpful. I would love to see the error stack for uncaught errors or like unhandled errors, but I don't know how we would implement the specifics, but I think it would be a lovely thing to have. And it's something that perhaps can't have a universal solution, because in a kernel context, you might not be able to allocate space for that stack and things like that. But like in a general user space context, where we're focusing on right now anyway, you could definitely try to allocate a stack and print a nice error trace if possible. I think that would be super cool. Theodore says, what did Theodore say? Hello, finally caught one of these live. Hello to you too. Dither8 says, hello Andreas, do you know and have an opinion on an X-like versus Wayland-like design for windowing/display protocols? Which is Serenity's most similar to? I don't know which one we're more similar to be honest. I would say we're probably somewhere in the middle, but somebody who knows Wayland better could probably answer in better detail. We don't have any strong interaction with GPU primitives at the moment. Like it is based on shared bitmaps and like CPU operations to do the buffer updates and stuff. But architecturally, it is a client-server architecture loosely inspired by X11, but I don't know Wayland enough to tell you what the differences and similarities are there. The literal definition of bruh says, any tips or ideas for someone wanting to build their own libgraphics from scratch? Currently looking to make my own render for my user interface toolkit. Tips or ideas for making your own graphics library? Yes, just start with something simple where you can put some pixels on screen. And then if you want to do from scratch pixel by pixel rendering, then just start with some basic primitives and give yourself a playground where you can see like a black window, and then you can draw like a red line or something between 2 points, and then start implementing primitives that way. At least that's kind of what I did when starting the graphics library for Serenity. I just started by implementing like horizontal lines, vertical lines, diagonal lines, text rendering, and just going one step at a time, making these little demos. And to render these things, I was using SDL at the time. So I just had a simple SDL program that would like open up a window that had an SDL surface, and then I would poke bytes directly into that. And I think that's a reasonable way to get started on something like that. And it's a lot of fun building graphics primitives. And it's very easy to make them obnoxiously slow, which it's like all these fun little problems to work through. Like, how do you make something fast enough that it doesn't lag? German WTB says, I like SVG, but its extreme complexity just rubs me the wrong way. I like conceptually elegant solutions, even to the point of disliking any ASCII-based file formats. It's more ideology than reason. Sure, it's true that SVG is complex, but it is also true that it's something that we support anyway. Like, so it seems like there you can sort of extend the complexity argument there, and say that perhaps it's more complex, but since we are able to reuse an existing component, it's actually less complex than taking on a completely different format, which would require, you know, its own parsing and rendering and so on. Like a consolidation of effort makes it like actually a simpler architecture. At least that's sort of how I tend to look at it, I think. And I will say, like, I'm not particularly looking forward to using or to implementing more SVG stuff, because it is it's a lot of stuff, like a lot of infrastructure in SVG for relatively little value. Like on the web, most content does not have SVGs, some of it does, and you do need it, but it's like I don't know, it's like the complexity versus benefit ratio of SVG is really weird, but it's part of the platform, so we don't have a choice. Let's see. Obina says, where else in LibJS can I work on? Finished some tasks on the T3 proposal for typed array. So if you're looking for something to do in LibJS, it is the best thing to do, probably, if you are completely lost, is to ask in the JS channel on Discord. And there's a bunch of things, like test 262 has a bunch of tests that we are currently failing for various reasons. And if you want to meaningfully improve LibJS, there might be tests that you can figure out why they don't work and fix them. But I can't tell you offhand exactly what would be a good thing to do. LibJS is it's like unusually mature compared to some of the other parts of the system, because we've just been putting so much effort into LibJS. So chat to the people in the JS channel on Discord would be my recommendation. Oh, Jean-Baptiste, hello there. Says, do you think SerenityOS has come along far enough to try and host the SerenityOS website? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a good question for Linus, who is currently hosting, as far as I know, has at least the Serenity VM. Let's visit. Connect. It's here. Hello, friends. Oh, it looks a little bit confused here at the bottom. I got some red network thing. Yeah, so my intuition says that we probably not super stable in the networking department yet. I think it's something that we could try doing for sure. We could try hosting a website on Serenity. Pretty sure that is already happening. I'm just going to close this before somebody has some kind of attack. I remember seeing Serenity web server. Somebody was hosting one. I don't remember the URL. But I think there were issues with, like, if you stay up long enough, then you run out of kernel memory or something like that because of TCP connections not closing, or I forget what it was. But it's definitely something that would be good to start experimenting with. And I think it wouldn't be unthinkable that we could get the kernel and web server components to a stability point where they're able to, you know, continuously serve without resource leakage or service interruption. That would be a fun target, actually, to look at. But I don't know. I don't have a strong intuition of how far away that is. Let's see. Tara Boba says, I'm enjoying making square emojis with a 7x10 image. Thoughts on rectangular square emojis? No strong thoughts, one way or the other. I don't know. I would be happy to hear the thoughts of other people who are working on the graphics assets and stuff. My only input to this at this stage is that it's sad that as you use a larger font, you are still stuck with tiny scaled up emojis. Let's see. Aris Tot says, will Yakt be supported in Hack Studio? Of course. And because you control full stack, will there be features that are not in standard IDEs? Who knows? Who knows indeed? I mean, Hack Studio is just an IDE. It's our IDE. And of course, we want to support Yakt in there, which will probably happen as part when we start bringing Yakt into Serenity to try that stuff out. Let's see. Donata says, I did not know you were married. Yes, I am. I've been married for a long, long time, and it's pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Probably the best thing in life, I would say. One of the absolute best decisions that I've ever made. Let's see. DJ Wisdom says, about your current hardware setup, is it up for a refresh or it's already maxed out? I think my hardware could definitely do with some upgrading, but I didn't really dig into it. What I did instead was I just got a separate machine so that I could run a distributed compiler cluster. So I have a second machine here that can accept 16 compile jobs, which cuts my Serenity build times almost in half. and that to me seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like a better thing to do than getting a new machine for my main workstation, because I'm happy with this computer. I have sentimental attachment to this computer, and I was able to purchase a pretty cheap machine that allowed me to double my compile jobs. So I'm happy with that, I guess, for now. But we'll see what happens in the future. Glenford says, Google seems to be trying to achieve the same thing as Yakt with their new Carbon programming language. Have you had a chance to have a look at Carbon? I have looked briefly at the Carbon language specification, and I think they are trying to achieve something different than what we are. We are trying to build a memory-safe systems programming language that leans heavily on Serenity patterns, while Carbon is trying to build a C++ replacement that is not necessarily safe, but they don't have to deal with the C++ standards committee, so they can just iterate on things as they would like, and those are certainly valid goals, and I don't know what they're going to do with it in the future. I know that they talked about an incremental path to safety or whatever in the future, and I wish them all the best with that, but we have very different goals. Like the first primary main goal of Yakt is to build a memory safe language. Without the memory safety, we might as well stay with C++, and Carbon just has different priorities. But I hope that they succeed, because more languages is great, and we can all learn from each other, and I'm sure that they're going to come up with some cool stuff that we can eventually steal, and maybe they will steal something from us in return. Who knows? I hope everybody succeeds, to be honest. Let's see. Mel Florence says, I think putting time is great and make you progress, but only if you go out of the comfort zone and learn new things. Otherwise, just spending time for spending time is useless. I am not sure exactly what that's in reference to, but you can absolutely pick up experience even while you're inside of your comfort zone, but it's true, you do have to break out of it often enough that you advance. But like, I think it gets too tiresome, at least for me. Like, I can't deal with being outside my comfort zone 100% of the time. Then I just get burned out. So I like to have, spend 25% of my time expanding the comfort zone by going outside of it, and then 75% of the time sort of working within that newly expanded area until I feel like, okay, now we can expand again. Let's see. Radiant Mango says, what other vector formats are there instead of SVG? And then Dither8 says, TinyVG. Yeah, there are a bunch of different ones. There's also the old clipart Windows metafile format, and the icon format, aforementioned icon format on a haiku, and probably more, but I don't know them by heart. Linus says, regarding hosting via Serenity web server, possible, and you remember right, still a bit unstable. Yeah, that's what I would expect indeed. It's certainly something that, I mean, it is obviously something that we should try to improve, because it will benefit everybody who uses the system if the system becomes more stable and more robust, and that's just generally valuable stuff. Pukar says, I want to contribute to the Serenity operating system. I am into game programming and web development, as in React and REST APIs. What will you suggest me to start with? Same thing I suggest to everybody is to just try out the system and look for something that you don't like or that you think could be better, and then try to fix it or make it better. I never recommend anybody to start anywhere in particular, because I want everybody to find their own entry point. Because I think that is really, really good for our sort of like approach diversity or whatever, where everybody comes at it from an angle that they find themselves, instead of me saying like, oh, before you do this or that, you should do this first, and like here's the onboarding stuff that you should work on. Just work on anything that attracts you. That's really the best thing. Fernanda says, are you a father? I am not a father, but I am an uncle. I have 3 nephews, and they are super cute, like ridiculously. Donatas says, do you think that Carbon will replace C++ in any capacity? No, I don't think so. I think it will supplement C++ in some Google projects and probably projects elsewhere. But the Carbon documentation, as I recall, says something like, if possible, please use Rust instead. Don't use this. Or I don't remember how they phrased it, but they say like, if you're making a new project, don't use this, use Rust. And so I think that it's not so much a replacement for C++ as a supplement and a springboard or whatever to other stuff. But I'm not on the Carbon team. I haven't spent significant time with it, so I don't understand their strategy. I can't really comment meaningfully on it, but it seems, at least to me, that it's not even their intention to replace the language. They're just scratching their own itches with C++ and trying to improve their current situation in an incremental way. Dither8 says, have you ever watched anime, Andreas? Yes, I have, but I did not get hooked, I have to say. It was not really for me. Let's see. Nicholas Engels says, everybody learn English in Sweden. Yes. If you go to public school in Sweden, then you will learn English. It is part of our general curriculum, and you also learn, at least when I was in school, you learn a third language, and we had the choice between German and French. I think nowadays there are additional languages you can choose, like Spanish, but I don't know anybody in that age bracket that I could ask how it works right now, but in a couple of years I can ask my nephews and then I will know more about it. Adler says, are there Easter eggs hidden in Serenity? Well, probably, but in general, we don't really put, we don't want to put like humorous or like funny things in user-facing parts of the system, because, and this is something I discovered after building the Serenity project and Serenity community, is that jokes don't really scale to hundreds and hundreds of developers working on something. You know, if you're making something in a small group of friends and you decide to put like a funny little joke in your game or program, that's one thing. But if you're building something with hundreds of people like we are, and then imagine if everybody wants to put like their funny little thing, suddenly we would have this project that has all these jokes everywhere, and it would sort of just start to look really unserious, right? And I added this this thing to the contribution policy, I think it was, a while ago, just asking people, like, please don't put like jokes or humorous references or whatever. I don't remember how I phrased it exactly, but like, let's not make jokes in user-facing parts of the system, and just keep like a technical, authoritative, formal tone in UI and in error messages, stuff like that. Because I think ultimately it's better that the software tells you exactly what's happening, like what's going on. If something goes wrong, you just want to have like a to the point, serious explanation of what went wrong, like the best explanation we can give. And we don't, like, there's these what's the thing? I forget. There's this oopsie whoopsie thing, right? Oopsie whoopsie. It's so difficult to find these things. Yeah, like this kind of stuff, and the Windows error messages and stuff like that. I mean, obviously this is not real, but you've seen these types of messages where they're just being like overly cutesy and funny or whatever, and I don't think that's a good thing to put into software, because it just makes it look unserious and kind of like it's not taking you seriously. And I have certainly been guilty myself of putting little jokes and things like that into Serenity in the past, and I've tried to remove all the user-facing little jokes that I could remember. I'm sure that there's something lurking here and there, and I will eventually find it and clean it up, but I don't know. It seems to me like that's a better direction. Let's see. Dither8 says, yes, keep software serious. Did you see the Cut the Cutesy Errors article on Hacker News? I did not see that, but it sounds like something I would find myself agreeing with. Let's see. David says, the languages you can choose as a third language in Sweden are German, French, and Spanish. Thank you, David, for providing up-to-date information. That is exactly what I thought. I think there's an addendum to that, which is that if you are an immigrant and you have like a different native language, then the Swedish school will also provide you a teacher in your native language, if I understand correctly. So when I was growing up, I had a lot of classmates from various countries, and every now and then they would disappear and go have like native language studies, which is a nice thing of the school to provide, I think. Let's see. DJ Wisdom says, did you know that SerenityOS native application Shot captures accurately pixel by pixel? I tried Windows Snip and Sketch and GIMP, but Shot did it for me. Shout out to MacDo for the suggestion. Yes, I did know that. I may have even written the utility, although I'm not sure if I did. Let's find out who did. Yes, I wrote Shot. Shot is pretty reliable. It's just grabbing the pixels in the Windows Server backing store, so we get exactly what's being visible on screen. We give it to you, so it's pretty handy. Let's see. Meowweb says, what do you think of Managarm? And as many of their contributors are in the OS Dev Discord server, what do you think of the server, if you've heard of it? What do I think of that? I don't really... I've heard of the OS Dev Discord server. I think I was a member there some years ago, but I eventually left because it was distracting, and I try to not have too many distractions. I have no opinion about it, like nothing bad to say, nothing to say at all, because I'm not there. And Managarm, I think it's definitely an operating system, and I don't have any opinion about that either because I haven't spent time working on it or working with it. But I'm happy that it exists. I'm happy that people are making operating systems, but I definitely don't have any formed opinions about either of these things. Let's see. Obina says, what would you use to memory profile a Python program? Memory profiling has been a pain. And then Linus, our resident Python, says to use Memray, which I'm not familiar with, but that is a pretty cool logo, so it's probably pretty good. Let's see. Alexander says, how does the ref counting in Yakt translate to C++? Are there features that are hard to translate to C++? So the ref counting in Yakt uses the ref counting that we have in C++ today. So when you make something ref counted in Yakt, let's go ahead and do that. I will make a little thing. So refi.yakt, and then let's see, refi. Can we get this thing working? All right. So if we make a class of some type, classes are always ref counted. And then we will make a function f that takes a foo thing. And we will also call that from main f foo. All right, so what this will do, now foo is ref counted because it's a class. What this will do is that it will create a non-null ref putter object in the generated C++. So if we compile this, actually, let's just only look at the generated C++. So as we can see here, in the main function, we create a non-null ref putter to hold the foo that we create here, and then the f function that takes a foo actually takes a non-null ref putter to foo. So basically, what happens is we use C++ smart pointers to pass these things around, and they take care of all the ref counting, like all the incrementing and decrementing and automatic destruction of the ref counted objects. And this turns out to be, it's very easy to work with because we can just use our tried and true, well understood ref counting classes. There are, of course, situations where we do sort of unnecessary ref count churning, where the count goes up and down pointlessly. And it's something that we knew from the start of the Yakt language that that's going to be an issue. And that's something that we're going to have to measure. And then there are various strategies for detecting and sort of eliding those unnecessary ref count manipulations. But even with state-of-the-art static analysis, you're still going to have some overhead from the ref counting. It's just part of the package. Let's see. German WTB says, speaking of everybody adding their own jokes, what do you think about creating an About Us repository where contributors can add some profile pictures and a small about text, and then display those in the About dialogues of Serenity applications for developers that worked on that app? Let's see, what do I think about that? I think I don't dislike the idea. Like, I like the idea of, like today we have copyright headers, right, in source code files. And wait, is this thing even working? We have copyright headers where people can put their names, and I remember in KDE, at least, they have in the about boxes, you can see who worked on each application. I don't hate that idea. Like, I think that's kind of neat, but at the same time, I would be wary of creating some kind of a thing where people feel like, oh, they want to tweak and edit this a lot. Like, I don't want 10% of our commits to be people screwing around with these. So something simple and bare bones, like a name, seems like a reasonable thing to me, but having everybody's picture and things like that be part of the system distribution, that feels like overkill to me. Now would be a good time to insert ads. I'm just gonna keep showing when that happens instead of clicking it. Fernanda says, will you eventually switch from your current distro to using Serenity on your machine? Yes, of course. Let's see. Rick Nam says, do you have a good mental model of the fmtlib-inspired ACK format? If so, how complex would you rate it? How complex would I rate ACK format? I don't know. It's not terribly complex. Maybe like I mean, it's like a solid 6 out of 10 complexity. Maybe it's not something that you can't understand if you sit down and like tease it apart for a bit. There are many C++ things that are way harder to understand than ACK format. That said, I have not been teasing it apart recently, so I'm definitely outdated on it, but I'm pretty confident that I could figure it out quickly if I needed to add something to it. Let's see. Hello, Philip. Okay, so Kook says, so an instance of the foo class is created with try foo. The try seems to be for failed memory allocation for foo, but isn't the paren a little bit ambiguous because of functions? And then Kook says, oh, can you add like an init function to foo to take custom params to foo? Right, so that's something that actually, who was working on? Dan is working on that right now. I think his name was Dan. To do custom constructors, but we already have implicit constructors. So here, if you have a field, then you actually have to pass it when you're instantiating the foo. So there's ongoing work for adding explicit constructors and destructors to the to classes and structs. Right now, we auto-generate constructor for both classes and structs, and the auto-generated constructor takes all fields. So it is kind of inconvenient if you have like a large complex class at the moment, because you are forced to initialize all the different fields, and you also it's kind of really bad for encapsulation that we force you, even if we have something that should be sort of private and only known by the class, you still have to initialize it when you're instantiating an instance of the class. So that is kind of awkward. Like, say that you have something like this that is some internal implementation detail, right? And then you would still have to say like cached false. And these problems will go away once we add proper constructors, and they are in development right now. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I think we just when we did this feature freeze in the language, right, in order to get self-hosting up and running, and there were a lot of great ideas floating around before the feature freeze that were just put on hold. But now that we are unfrozen since a while ago, we are working our way back to like actually building and implementing all those ideas, and custom constructors are one of them. We're also going to do stuff like function overloading and many other things. I think Ali was working on compile time execution right now. And static reflection, I want to say. Or at least he was complaining about static reflection. I don't know if he's working on it. Maybe he was just lamenting the lack of it. Let's see. Paul says to German WTB that you can ask on Discord server to get a couple of extra fields added to the user map. Ooh, that is kind of a funny idea, actually. The user map, which I think is here. So this is our SerenityOS user map where people around the world are hacking on Serenity or just following development but haven't started hacking yet. And we currently just show names, but you could definitely imagine extending this with additional fields, maybe picture or whatever. This is open source, obviously, and you can find it here if you want to mess around with it and maybe suggest some new features or implement something. I feel like Linus was the one who built this thing originally, or forked it from somebody. Anyway, user map is a thing. Let me link that in the chat, actually. Yeah, it's forked from the Zig user map. That's true. Let's link it in the chat. Okay, so German WTB says, I think I remember you saying that you often just don't use debuggers. What would it take for you to always prefer a debugger over debug line? Have you ever used an IDE debugger in something like Java/C#? I have used IDE debuggers a ton for C++ and for Visual Basic back in the day. And it's totally okay. Like, I don't know. I don't dislike being in a debugger environment. I just feel more nimble while using like print debugging. There's something about it to me that just keeps me, I don't know, keeps me like attached to the problem. I feel like if I'm using a debugger, I go into this other headspace where I'm not as engaged and not as efficient. And that's a personal thing. Like, if anybody who feels like they are more engaged or more productive using a debugger, they should obviously use a debugger. I've been doing this for a very long time and I've tried both approaches. So now I just choose to use the one where I feel more productive or more engaged. And I certainly don't hold anybody's choice in the matter against them. Let's see. Imago says, I haven't heard about Yakt until 3 minutes ago when I tuned in here for the first time. I see some similarities to Go. Is it an inspiration? No, I can't say that Go is an inspiration. It's not really one of the languages, at least not one of the languages that I looked much at when we started working on Yakt. But of course, other people may have been inspired by it, but it's not one of the explicit original inspirations. But obviously, you know, all languages are inspired by each other, so it's always, you're always going to see similarities between things. Let's see. Twisham says, if Yakt uses reference counting, do you have any smart solution for memory leaks when there are reference cycles? So my intuition about that is to build a system where on exit we will just print out any reference cycles that are currently in the program, like in a debug build, for example. And that's something I've seen work really well before at Apple. And I'm keen to build something like that into our language as well. And then of course you can also build more sophisticated tools for like rendering a graph of object relationships and things like that. But it is my intuition that doing a simple cycle detector that just prints out cycles on exit will catch most of the cycles. Ali says, I've currently put the static reflection stuff on hold so I can get CTFE working enough to include the prelude with and merge that in. Well, God bless you, Ali. Just adding cool features to the language left and right. Not just cool, but useful. So that is very cool. Let's see. Radiant Mango said, now when Serenity is 3 years old and some components have already been rewritten or replaced, is having a history section like OpenBSD man pages interesting? I think, in my view, it's not particularly interesting because we haven't had any kind of releases. So it feels to me like why would we document, like, it's almost like, should we write a historical account of the mistakes we made on the way to getting where we are today? Maybe, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it should be part of the man page, because the way I think of the man page is like, here's something for a user to read. And if the user was using a previous version of the system, it had a certain behavior, and then they install the new release, and then they check the history section for some command, and it says, oh, this used to work this way, now it works this other way. At the same time, we are kind of an evergreen system that doesn't really have releases. So realistically, like, maybe a user of Serenity would just always be on the master branch like a madman, and that sort of information would be relevant to them. I don't know. I guess I would have to see what this would look like in order to understand in order to be able to judge if it has value. And I'm not the only person who can judge that, obviously, but if somebody has a proposal for something like that, that would be interesting to see, I suppose. Kook says, when is the next anniversary of SerenityOS? So the Serenity birthday, I've been counting every year on October 10th, which is the first date in the Serenity repository. So the first commit went in on October 10th, 2018. So that's when I've been doing the Happy Birthday Serenity blog posts. And it's, it's like a little fudged because I was working on the code a couple of days before that, but we needed to have a specific date, and the things before that did not have specific dates that are public, so it just seemed better to just use this as the birthday, because it is when the repository started after all. So yes, October 10 every year. Cook says, what are you going to do on SerenityOS's birthday? Well, if I know myself, I am probably going to be rushing all over the place, trying to finish a blog post about Happy Birthday Serenity. That's what I've been doing for the past couple of years. I always do these things last minute for some reason. I guess because I like the idea of them being like completely current and like not having this stale feeling of being written a week ago or a day ago. Or at least I tell myself I like that. It's the same thing with the monthly update videos. They usually get finished like around 9 p.m. On the last day of the month or something like that. And then afterwards I tend to collapse on the couch or on the bed. Let's see. Radiant Mango says, I feel like OpenBSD used it to credit the author. Like, this command was introduced in 1995 by ABC123. Right. So, I mean, that's kind of neat, I suppose. I do like giving credit to people. I just, I wonder if we can do that in a more structured way, instead of just having like like the sort of free-form history part of manual pages, if there could be, like we were discussing earlier, like a place in about boxes for like people who worked on this. You can see them there. Of course, that kind of excludes command line tools. But in Serenity, we often like to have sort of generalized solutions to all kinds of things. Like we have a library, or we have library functions for parsing arguments, for example, and generating these like tool usage help screens. And you could totally imagine doing something similar for like keeping track of contributors to a command or to an application, and then having ways to present that in a consistent way in the system. I don't dislike it, but it would need to be tasteful somehow, I guess. There are so many things to do, and I was thinking about that this week a bunch. Like there are so many different things I want to do at any given time, and I was feeling bad that I only had so many hours of energy in the day that I could put towards these things. So I was forced to sort of budget my time between some parts of the system I wanted to work on. But then I realized that this is such a luxurious problem. Like, ooh, I have to choose between these two super fascinating things to do. Life is truly terrible, isn't it? No, it's really great. Yeah, so I think I like the idea of structured attribution information somehow, but I don't have a clear picture of how it should work and what granularity and the presentation, but something to think about, yes. Gabriel Soldani says, thoughts about internationalization and language support for Serenity. POSIX is standardizing GNU getText. So personally, I'm not a big fan of internationalization. I think 100% of internationalized or like localized applications that I've seen have been very ugly in the languages that I've seen, or like clearly worse than the original in English. And because we are building an operating system not for end users but for ourselves, it has always been my position that we're better off just building a really consistent and strong system in English that just looks good and is like polished everywhere, instead of having a system that has 50 different translations of varying percentages of completion, with like untested areas, and I don't know, that always struck me in the Linux world as one of those areas where like quality just deteriorates so quickly, or your perception of quality deteriorates so quickly. If you switch your system to Swedish, for example, and then there's like all these crappy translations and like not the best choice of words in places, or like some text is too long or something is too short, or it doesn't look right because the people who made the UI never saw it with this translation. And it's a compromise, I mean, my native language is not English. Most people in Serenity's native language is not English, but by consolidating everybody and doing everything in English, or US English specifically, then we end up with a level of polish that I think would be most likely incredibly hard to attain with our manpower that we have at the moment. If we were to splinter ourselves across everybody doing their own language. All of that said, I am not sure what I think about something like getText. I don't want the system to look crappy. Like, I don't want somebody to use SerenityOS to make an ugly looking screenshot. uh, and because it makes me sad when somebody finds ways to make Serenity look ugly by like changing the look of the system to the point where it looks bad. Like that makes me feel sad. And maybe it's my experience at Apple just made me that way, where the Apple policy is very much like let's not give the users too much rope, because they will just hang themselves and make the UI look awful. So let's just limit their UI configuration options so that they can't make it ugly. And I am very sympathetic to that approach. That's why Serenity has always been fairly limited in its theming capabilities. Let's see. Gabriel says also localized documentation is extremely hard. Yeah, that is absolutely true, right? And we have like, it's already hard to get people to write documentation. I'm not great about writing documentation myself. And the idea that we're already struggling to get documentation written, and then we would also have to rewrite it in all these different languages, or somebody would be taking on the responsibility of doing that. That doesn't seem right. Anyway. Let's see. Linus delivering something. SerenityOS website on SerenityOS, served by web server. All right. That is actually really cool. So I guess now it's just a matter of time before this thing goes down. And then we can learn how long it stayed alive. But that's awesome that you got that running. What else do you have on here? Oh, look at that. Maybe I shouldn't poke around too much. But that is awesome. Yeah, maybe we could get it up on some interesting SerenityOS.org subdomain or something like that. I think the best thing for something like this would be if we could also have good logging, so that we could, like, when something goes wrong, we could, analyze what happened. So if you're going to run this Linus, I would super appreciate it if you could set up so it has like Wireshark logs or whatever, or if that's feasible. I don't know, maybe those are, maybe they grow really large, but that would be really nice to have. Anyway. So we are at the bottom of the chat. Did somebody say something here? Philip was saying, what's the next cursed/weird thing I should waste a few days working on? I don't know. I would not recommend working on things just for the memes. I would recommend working on things that are I mean, if it's fun to make something for the memes, then go for it. But like, if you want to build something that that is useful to other people, then I would use your powers for good, not for memes. As long as it's fun for you, of course. DJ Wisdom says, will Serenity Web Server work with PHP Python? Well, you could probably hook those things up if you implement like a CGI interface. I don't remember the specifics of how that works, but I remember writing my own CGI application in C like 15 years ago or something, and you could definitely support that in our web server somehow. Ooh, look at that. Matas with the gifted memberships. That's so cool. Thank you, Matas, for gifting the golden yaks to people. Wow. So YouTube now has gifted subs. That is really awesome. Thank you. And I hope everybody will make good use of the golden yaks. Impressive. Impressive. Very nice. Let's see. GemoWTB was saying, what are you excited to write with Yakt? I am excited to try to use it for system services, to see if we can build like a memory safe image decoder servers, or memory safe like request server for doing HTTP, HTTPS, stuff like that. Of course, there's a lot of code that would need to be adapted to make all that work. Like there's a big stack of stuff, but I like the idea of taking services, because the services already run independently of the software that they service. So you have these daemons that run on the system, and they just have an IPC protocol that you use to talk to them. So replacing them should be possible without rewriting the whole application that talks to them. So I find that really enticing or interesting. Like one of the first things I tried doing with Rust was rewriting the clipboard service to see if we could get, you know, like just an IPC service up and running in a different language. And I did have that working. Like I had a Rust clipboard on Serenity. So doing that sort of exercise where you just kind of replace system components with memory safe alternatives, I find that interesting. I also like the idea of making libraries safe and large applications. Of course, eventually I want to make the browser engine safe as well. And I think it's definitely doable. It's just, you know, it's a large undertaking that will be an incremental, will require a lot of incremental work, but I'm like equally excited and equally intimidated by the effort that will go into it. But I think if we succeed at that, then we will have something really, really cool. Let's see. BBQ says, in Yakt, what is the memory layout of enums? So enums in Yakt become variant classes, basically, or variants. So the cogen is a little bit gross, but let's make one. Or let's see. So we make a foo enum that has A, B, and C, let's say, and let's just do something like that. And then can we get a well, now it's called refi. Well, that doesn't matter. So if we look at this thing, what this generates is foo is a variant, and then the different like it's a C++ variant template instantiation, but what these are then structs. So we make a struct for every possible enum variant, and there's a language overload here, because we generate this thing called variant, and the name of each of these things is an enum variant. So every one of these enum variants becomes a struct, and then those structs are individual possible types for this C++ variant. So it's essentially like a tagged union. The end result is that you have essentially a tagged union. We're just doing a bunch of C++ template magic, and it is a bit sad with the code generation for this stuff is slow. I mean, the LLVM code generation ends up being quite slow because using templates is not fast with Clang or LLVM or GCC for that matter. Like GCC is even slower. There have been some efforts or there have been some attempts to generate just raw C enums, raw C tagged unions instead of C++ variants, and there are some benefits to be had there, but last time Ali talked about it, he was not happy with the way the code looked afterwards, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Ultimately, one of our biggest problems with Yakt as it is right now is that it's very slow to compile because of C++. Because of C++ and Clang being slow at generating code for the templates. But yeah, the memory layout is C++ variants. David says, you showed the distributed build system earlier. Can you show some background and how you implemented that? Been looking into Ccache a bit and would like some tips. So Ccache, just install Ccache on your machine and put it in front of your GCC or G++ invocation, and you're good. Ccache is perfect. It's just local, and that's a good thing to have. What I'm using for distributed compile is this thing called Icecream. So you can find that, wait, where did my Foxfire go? Icecream GitHub. Yes, this thing. And this is a very, very handy system for creating a little distributed compile cluster. And I find it much nicer than distcc because it's much easier to use arbitrary tool chains with Icecream, at least in my experience, because they have this thing that they call environments. So you can generate an environment for your specific tool chain. And so what I do, for example, to build an environment for building Serenity is that I just, let's see, what's the thing again? Let's make a throw away directory here so I don't mess anything up. But essentially you can do icecc, create environment, and then you have to tell it where your compiler is. So I say, oh, I have this compiler right here called x86-64 PC Serenity GCC. And I think you just tell it where the compiler is, like that. And then it creates a tarball. And then what you can do with that tarball is you can say, I think it's ICC version or something like that. Yeah, ICC version. So I have mine right here. This is my Serenity tarball that I'm using, but you just say ICC version, and then you point to the tarball that you want to use, like that. And then if you invoke your compiler like this now, then it will find nearby Icecream hosts in your network and send them this tarball if they don't already have it. And then it will use that exact compiler on the other side. And it's like a little bit tricksy to set up, but the documentation is good. And once you have this, it's so easy. Like whenever I update the Serenity toolchain, for example, I can just generate a new Icecream environment. And then my second computer just uses the right compiler automatically, instead of me having to go and manually install the right compiler on the other side. So I've really been enjoying that. And then they also have this neat tool called Icecream Monitor, or Icemon, which, let's see if we can, I'll show you what it looks like if I fire off a huge build here. Oh, I guess I should touch something large so we can, let's touch document. Oh wait, I guess it's not enough to touch it. I also have to mess with it so that Ccache breaks. Yeah, so if I do this, if I do that, then what? Wait, why did that not? Do I have to do something bigger? Oh, here we go. Okay. So now it is, as you can see, sending out compile jobs to both computers. And you see that this one has 16 jobs ongoing at the moment, and then you can kind of monitor the activity like that. It's really cool. Anyway, let's not do like a big heavy compile right now while we're streaming, if we can avoid it. So I recommend Icecream for sure. Let's see. Gabriel says, I was seeing JT's video writing the minimal SDL API and he forgets to call quit at the end. Are we going to see something like RAII or Python context managers eventually? Yes, of course, we will have RAII once we get the destructors working in the language. Umberto says, you probably answered that many times. Could you comment on a specific example of memory unsafety case of C++ that made you choose to build your own language instead? Use after free is really the main issue, because stuff like you can guard reasonably well against like array, like out of bounds array accesses if you use like bounce checking everywhere and stuff like that, but use after free is tricky because in any sufficiently large C++ application, you will end up having some kind of weird lifetime relationship between some things. It's just, it always ends up happening. And that was the point for me that made me say like, okay, well, there is no clear path to me in C++ to protect ourselves sufficiently against use after free. Like the one thing you can kind of do against it, I guess, is that you can use a garbage collector in C++, but I felt like that's not the approach I wanted to take. That's why I wanted to explore making a new language instead, because I don't know. It's just use after free bugs are so irritating, and C++ does not have a good story for dealing with them. Let's see. FMees says, do you think some kind of incremental compilation is a good solution to long comp times? What I mean is only compiling modified Yakt files and leave unmodified ones untouched, invoking Clang less often. Yes, absolutely. I think incremental compilation is absolutely the a big thing that we need to get working. Right now, we are doing the worst possible thing in Yakt. We take all the input files and generate one big output file. So the Yakt compiler produces a single output file. And that is just not great, because it means that every new compile is a unique recompile of everything. So we definitely want to get to a place where every input file produces a separate output file, at least one separate output file, possibly more. We have been discussing the idea of possibly generating like one output file for every class, one for every struct, things like that, so that you could, like if you change something in a Yakt file, but like you only change a member function of one class, then you don't have to recompile all the other classes, because you could like only generate that one output. I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic that that would be really helpful for build times in the end, but it's probably going to be a bit of work to get there. So yeah, but like starting to work on splitting out the output, that would definitely be very valuable. Joel says, I seem to remember you working in embedded before quitting to work full-time on Serenity. How different was that from your previous work, and what was the most valuable thing you learned doing it? Yeah, sure. I worked in embedded industrial networking stuff for almost 2 years, I guess, before I quit to do Serenity. And it was very different from big tech, because it was small tech, and in small tech, you don't have infinite money, and you don't have like a huge staff or huge groups of people that you can lean on to build things. But like I had a lot more autonomy, so I was given like a project that somebody made the hardware, and then I had to make like the whole software stack for it. And that was it was kind of fun and interesting, but it was also a bit, I don't know, like I don't think I managed my time well enough to say that I was successful at it. I often felt like I had gotten pretty used to this big tech environment where you're just like a cog in a big machine, and there's like somebody above you and somebody above them making sure that the machine always keeps turning. And when I worked in small tech, I found myself sort of feeling like, wait, this project is not making as much progress as it should be, and I'm the only one to blame for that. And that was sometimes a little bit distressing, but then I just had, I had to just pick myself up and work on things harder. But I guess what I learned from that is that it can be very helpful to be in these environments sometimes where you're not just a cog in a big machine, because if you want to become more like well-rounded as a developer and as a person, it's hard to develop well-roundedness when you are a small part of a big machine. So that's something I really value about my experience in small tech, that it forced me to think more holistically and like take responsibility for my work to a higher degree, I guess. Let's see. German WTB says, does Yakt have a concurrency model? Not yet. Kook says, is Yakt going to solve anything related to thread safety? So the loosey-goosey, hand-wavy idea about thread safety that I have in my head right now is that we will have something similar to JavaScript, where you just different threads execute in separate contexts and they don't share memory, and then you just have a strict protocol for like channeling data between the different threads, so that you sort of you take away the tools that you could use to hurt yourself. That has always seemed like a very reasonable approach to me, and of course you do sacrifice some potential performance by taking away some of those tools, but at the same time we also have unsafe in the language as sort of an escape hatch for when you want to do unsafe things. So perhaps we can also build something incrementally where we add more high performance multi-threading features over time as we find ways to make them safe. But I think initially the approach that we're taking with Yakt very much is let's just build a tiny feature set that is safe first, and then expand with more capabilities, more features as we learn the language and as we figure out ways to make it safe, instead of this approach that other people are taking, where they say, oh, we're just going to make a big language and then develop a safe subset. We are only doing the safe subset and then expanding from there incrementally. That, to me, that just seems like a better approach, but to each their own. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Bijin says, what's your thoughts on Jonathan Blow Jai programming language? Did you find any feature in Jai that can be implemented in Yakt? I don't really have strong thoughts about Jai, one way or the other, but I will say that every language has at least one feature that that can be stolen for Yakt, but I don't have strong feelings about Jai or any other language specifically. Philip says, I kind of want to work on the AR64 port, but I'm honestly not quite sure where to start. I'm sure that if you talk to the folks in our AR64 channel, they will have suggestions for where you can start. One good way to start is, like, just imagine that you are bringing up your own like miniature kernel on AR64 and just try to get it to do some basic things like in QEMU. I guess see if you can get it to render a cowboy hat on the screen or something like that. Let's see. Abhishek says, hey Andreas, any chance you read Linus Torvalds' book just for fun? I found quite a resemblance in how Linux grew and how Serenity grew. I did read that. I read that when it came out. When was that? Just for Fun? Was that like 2002 or something? 2001. Yes, I read it back in 2001 or 2002, I think. Or possibly later. I don't know. I remember reading it and then not really understanding the impact of what I was reading, because I was kind of a Windows user at the time, but I somehow ended up reading that anyway. I don't remember the specifics, actually. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but I do remember that it was not super impactful originally, but the idea always stuck with me of like this guy who's just doing something for fun. And obviously Linus and his project have been a huge inspiration to me and to most open source developers in the world today. So I'm glad that I read it. Maybe I should reread it, actually. I don't even remember what it was like anymore. Let's see. Surreal Egg says, I've been working on an alternative Yakt compiler for a week now, still working on a parser, but it's better than nothing. Ooh, that is fascinating. An alternative Yakt compiler. Okay, very cool, very cool. Fun to see what comes of that. I think it's going to be a bit of a moving target for a while, that's for sure, because there's going to be new features coming in. But if you don't mind it, then by all means, go for it. Let's see. So I guess we are actually getting towards the end of the stream here. So we're going to close it up pretty soon, but let's take this question. Have you already written 100,000 lines of Yakt? I don't know. I don't think so. I've written tens of thousands of lines, but not 100,000 lines. So I don't really have an opinion on the language yet. Like I can't tell if it's good or bad. Like it's clearly very limited if you compare it to a mature production quality language. But I guess I do like the direction it's going so far. But after I write 100,000 lines, I will tell you my opinion of Yakt, and then we will see. Let's see. Devashish says, hello, Andreas. Nice to be here after so long. Nice to see you back, Devashish. It's been a while. Hope you're doing great. You too. Quick question. What is the diff between async and non-blocking I/O? I read many Stack Overflow threads, but couldn't quite get it. I'm not exactly sure either, I guess. Depends on what context you mean. If you're talking about like POSIX async stuff, I don't actually know how that works because I never looked into how it works, like POSIX AIO. I've never tried to use it, and I don't know how it works, so I couldn't tell you. Sorry. But I'm sure that you can figure out how it works if you try to use it for something. That's typically what helps me. If I don't understand how something works, just try to use it. Try to write a little application that does it one way and then the other way, and then you'll probably be able to divine the difference from that. Imago says, what's the official Serenity pizza? The official Serenity pizza is margarita, nothing but tomato sauce and cheese. And then Kook asks if we can explain atomics and how they relate to threads. Are atomics for thread safety? Atomics are, I mean, this is kind of a longer question for, it's a bit hard to answer now that we have 2-3 minutes remaining, but atomics are essentially a mechanism that help you access data in a synchronous way where you can't be interrupted in the middle of accessing the data. So, or you can be interrupted in a sort of predictable way. So, say that you have a 64-bit integer, then you want to increment in memory. Then, in order to increment a number, you have to first read it, and then increment that thing that you read, and then write it back to its location. And atomics give you these primitives for doing operations like that in sort of a specific way that is consistent. And there's a lot more to that, and I feel like I can explain it better, but if you ask it next week, we can talk about it and we can read more about it. Otherwise, I would just encourage you to just Google atomics. But now we are at the end of the stream. So Taro Boba says, don't traditional margarita pizzas have basil on them? Maybe they do. Maybe they do indeed. Anyways, I have to go. So thank you all for coming to Office Hours. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all of the questions, comments. Thank you for joining the Golden Yak Herd, everybody who did, and to the Madman who gifted a bunch of memberships. Thank you for that. And if you end up working on SerenityOS this weekend, then please come to the Discord server and hang out. Show us what you're working on, because programming is more fun when you do it with your friends. And that's what we're all about. So thanks again, and see you next time.